Got a package today. What is it? Came pretty quickly in the mail. Only took 3 days. Ta-da! And put it on tonight. Put them on tonight. A little bit of a smush right there. The list of tools that helped me. You know, you can improvise and use different ones, but this is everything that I found that I needed. You got at least 2 jack stands right here. Sorry. You can use it, need an impact wrench, but I did not remove my exhaust. I didn't have to. I made it work. That's where I would see you would need an impact gun, but I could not remove my bolts. So I just had to skip removing it and go around it. These are the rubber pieces that you have to cut out of the back of the subframe, and it says that in the instructions. These are pruning shears. These worked awesome for cutting those, super easy. Then you've got your pry bar, and then you've got for your air ratchet wrench there, you've got your 19. You need to have this 19 socket in 1/2 inch and 3/8 inch. These are both 19s, but one's a 1/2, one's a 3/8. Got some wobble sockets there. Definitely you cannot do the job without. I use this on the air wrench and my torque wrench and my Craftsman just regular ratchets. Then you got different flashlights. This flashlight here rotates and bends, and it's kind of helpful. It flexes and it turns on. It's really bright. And then you're going to need your WD-40, and screwdriver is usually helpful. I used all 3 different of my Craftsman wrenches. I've got 20, this is the wheel lock. This is the 21 for the wheels. I've got the 10 millimeter, the 14 millimeter, and I've got some different converters to swap those out for different wrenches for different situations. And you've got different extensions all the way down to 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2. I got my torque wrench, and then the pry bars. I have one more longer pry bar, but since I was on the ground, there was no way to use the longer pry bar. So yeah, and then of course you need to have your jack, and that's helpful to just cut some wood and have a wood plate to support the differential there and anything else. So there we go. Quick pan back. My name is Brian. This is my Infiniti Q50 Q50S Signature Edition 3.0T rear wheel drive. I am undertaking installing the subframe bushing collars on this the rear portion of this car, which is going to help tremendously with the launching of the car. And I'm not necessarily a racer in the corners, but you never know what the future holds. But this car, I wouldn't, kind of insinuate that this is going to be a track car of any means, but drag strip because of the motor, V6 twin turbo. Yeah, fun car to take down the drag strip. not the ultimate racing machine, but yeah, so with that said, I'm gonna jump right in, and real quick, I'm gonna just try to document this install. So I've got my tires loosened up. I'm gonna pull those off. I'm not pulling them off right this second. I got my lug nuts loosened. I've got the rear of the car jacked up at the differential. The hydraulic jack is holding it right there. And then I'm going to be putting these stands that I have, $9.99 at Walmart, those are going to go under the frame right here when I get finished taking off some covers. These little covers mount, these little covers right here mount right up underneath right here, right underneath the car, and they kind of cover up that the subframe portion where I need to insert the collars. So this is, I guess, protects that area. So there's three 10 millimeter bolts that just mount right there. And this little cover comes out. Got that set over here to the side. And now I've got to remove a brace, and that covers on both sides. You've got to remove it on both sides. And now there's a brace that I'm going to have to remove. And that's the next step to start busting into this procedure of installing the Z1 Motorsports subframe bushing collars. So that's where we're at so far. So okay, here we go. I mean, this is what you got to do. So there's the jack point right there on my frame. Hopefully that's good enough. Want to just try to get in a flat place where it is, and as far as I know, that's the frame. And then there's my jack still on the differential, and then there's my other jack stand over there in approximately the same spot. So here's that brace that I got to remove right here. That's the next thing. That's the brace, and so I'll do that on this passenger side and the driver's side. And then once I get those, then those are the spots. That's where one of the two of the bushings go, or three of them. And then over here, and that's where the other bushings go. That's the front, and that's the rear, mounted to the frame by rubber bushings, so they have a degree of flex. So that's what we're looking at. So let me back up, take it wide, and then I think it's a key for everyone to see. Here's what we're looking at with the car. The ass end is sticking pretty far up in the air. So that's where we're going to be at this point. So based with, I have lots of logs. We had trees fall through during a recent storm, and I've got all kinds of lumber. So I got these split pieces of lumber using is for wheel chocks. I mean, I'm not going to buy the plastic ones in the stores that are shitty. I'd have to have some from like the airline people that use those heavy duty rubber ones, or a big truck company. But this is going to keep the car from rolling forward or rolling back, and if there's anything bad that happens. And I got them on both sides. So that is key to remember, because when I jacked up that front end and lowered it down, the car really wanted to shift. So you want to have the wheels chalked, both sides. So, and then the parking brake on for the rear, just to help you get your wheel nuts off. And yeah, so there you go. Man, that nut is on there. Man, I'm gonna turn the compressor up. Probably should put on my eyeglasses when using a power tool like this. Golly. tighten, loosen. Let me see. Tighten, loosen. Make sure I'm going the right way. Okay, and you saw the video. I tried to remove those exhaust nuts with the air ratchet, man, and no luck. And I got it turned up all the way, and I'm just not that skilled with air ratchets, you know. So I'm a little apprehensive in some regards, just because I don't have a lot of experience. But I'm gonna take these out and see. I mean, I've got room. I mean, it's got room to drop down, you know. I don't know if you can see that. Let me stop moving the camera. You know, maybe 2 inches. So maybe I can get these collars on without taking the exhaust off. And then you've got these nuts right here on the exhaust. And how am I supposed to fit an air ratchet into right here? I put my half-inch wrench, half-inch ratchet on there with a 14 millimeter, and I couldn't even come close to budging it. Couldn't even get a hint, a glimmer that it was loosening up. So I mean, I just don't know. Man, that exhaust is, those bolts are on there. But I'm gonna just try taking these off and see if these are much different. That came off really easy. Man, I just cannot figure out, but you know, that's part of being a mechanic and having the experience, which I don't have that experience of why the exhaust bolts are just like they're welded. Man, that's torque. I mean, my air ratchet is just not even budging those, and I've got it on the highest power. So again, I might just try lowering this down. There's plenty of room lowering this down and doing this install without taking off the exhaust like the instructions said. Wouldn't that be cool if I could do that? I mean, it looks like it could be possible. Oh well, we'll see. I mentioned earlier about these, I don't know, these connect to the subframe and are some kind of brace, but I think I saw that they come off once you loosen everything off. They can come off on their own. So just doing a step-by-step. So I removed both of these are 14 millimeter that I pointed to earlier, and they're not torqued on that bad. I just used my breaker bar, and they're really easy to get off. Hopefully nothing just falls down on top of me as I take this out, because I've got the other side out too. So I've got the two 14 millimeter bolts, and these will be these two 14 millimeter bolts out. So just step in the process. So now all I've got to do is loosen the front bolt. Let's see if I can take the camera and point it over there. If you can see the front portion of the subframe on this side and the other side, and then this should all drop down. +2. Nothing's easy. So instead of my approach of trying to not take the exhaust off, I have the rubber hanger. Let me make sure you can see this in the video. The rubber hanger right here that comes down and attaches to the exhaust right here and allows this to, you know, vibrate and have some movement. I had to pry that off. I'm gonna have to pry it off on the other side because this attachment point is to the subframe. So if I lower the subframe, the exhaust is gonna have to lower too. So I detach that. I may have to even pop that totally off. I don't know if that's going to be enough distance for how this gets lowered down. But I'll have to do that on the other side, and you got to use pry bars, and I tried to lube this up with some WD-40, and it's not a simple task. Being on the ground, man, makes it so much more difficult. Only having 1.5 feet distance from right here. If it was up on a lift, this would be a whole different story. But, you know, we just don't have access, a lot of us, to lifts. So that's the next step, to try to get this to lower down and then get the collars put on. So we'll see how this goes. This is just step by step how I'm doing it, and the problems I'm running into, and the things I'm having to figure out. So hopefully this will help someone. Also, I want to give a shout out to another YouTuber at Cadro Technologies. I learned about these bushing inserts, collars, from him, and once I saw his video, it totally made sense to me. I totally experienced exactly what he talked about in his video of how beneficial these will be to kind of eliminate wheel hop. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out to him and acknowledge him, because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. And you know, you got to give credit where credit is due. Okay. Next part of the video, if you don't have a breaker bar like this from Pittsburgh, from the store where you get that, Harbor Freight, this is the 1999, if I remember correctly. It's not the Icon 79 or 59 or 69. This works great, and it's got this contoured handle, so it may be the $29 one, I can't remember, but man, this just breaks bolts loose. Throughout this car, having this is a big advantage. Definitely it's high quality. I read the reviews. I mean, this will last a lifetime. So with that said, I used it to, let me get under here, it takes just a second. I used it to undo the front of the subframe bolt, and that just came off so easy with that breaker bar. And I'm sorry about the dark under here. Maybe I'll increase the brightness in the software. But yeah, so that brings me to my next part. Let me set my camera down. See if this will get this into view. Yeah, okay. So I'm thinking this brace is hanging here. So I mean, no, I've never seen any videos on this, so I don't know. Even Cadros didn't address this. I'm going to go ahead and this is, you know, the main portion of the subframe seems to be supported by my jack. So I'm going to take the front bolt off, and this should drop down, and then allow me to insert the piece. So I may just put this back on just as a safety precaution for now. But you know, when I lower the jack, the hydraulic jack down, this will come down and allow me access to the collar. So yeah, that's the next step. Okay, this is just going to be me torquing the front part of the subframe loose with my breaker bar. don't even need the air ratchet, or I can't think of the correct terminology for that. People are probably going to laugh at me, but the air wrench. Man, I just wish that we could have gotten those exhaust bolts off, as that just kind of held me up. But yeah, this gets that loose, and then I'm going to grab my ratchet to speed this process up. The manual, my manual Craftsman. Get this out of the. It's under pressure, so I mean, new territory for me, so a little bit at a time. It's dropping away. Good Lord. Welcome to my life. Alright, well hopefully this again doesn't fall down. Tear the car up. It shouldn't. My arm is getting tired. Arm's cramping. There's that. Put that out of the way. Put this back on so nothing comes falling down. Alright, the next step is to lower the whole subframe down. Alright, what I'm thinking is put the bottom ones in first and then lower it down without taking the bolts off the bottom where this thing could actually fall down. So put the bottom ones in that go up towards the top of the car, put those in while I have room, and then once I have all those in four corners, then I'll lower the jack down and it'll come into the spot that gives me more space at the top where I can put the collars in from the top. Now that's just how my game plan is looking right now. We'll see how that works out. Maybe this is the way to do it. Maybe it's not. So for now, I'm going to take these off. And I'm going to read up my instructions real quick on which ones go where. And WD-40's ready. And then we'll get those installed. Just to make note, I went ahead and followed the instructions. Instead of inserting the bushings on the bottom, I went ahead and inserted collar C on top, and then step number 10, collar D, and cut that rubber bushing out and inserted collar D up there on the back, and then came up from the other end with the other collars. So yeah, just following the instruction, I guess, is the smartest way to do it. All right, I think I got it. God dog it, it keeps fucking going up and hitting me. I'm gonna twist this a little bit, look like that's smooth. Lowering it down. Very carefully. Ooh, ooh. That's probably good enough. Everything looks good. Get you a close-in photo of of this side. There you can see the gap there in the front, and there is the gap in the rear. Same thing on the other side. All right. As far as I know, the collars just fit in there. I've rotated them, and if you push down on them, I mean, they'll get flush with this metal piece behind it. So when they go up, that'll get pushed down. And then, sorry about the light. There's this ring that needs to be cut off. Just kind of holding off. I'm gonna do that in the morning, and then the back one's gonna insert right in here, in that gap, and then do that on the other side, and then I'll come up and raise that up and put the ones on the bottom that go right in between here, and the ones that go, let me get my bearings, where are we? Oh yeah, and the ones that'll go right in here and in this area right here, right there. So, looks pretty good. Everything looks pretty solid on the bottom. So, there's the car. Still sitting up. So I'm gonna work on it again tomorrow and probably get this wrapped up. All right, see you in the morning. All my tools, my scatterbrain. Definitely need to get some pry bars to pry out these rubber hangers. And again, I did not remove my exhaust, so you've got to have those pry bars. Man, those are mandatory. And then you got all the tools laying around. Even some tools over there on the other side. Nuts and bolts everywhere. We have got an infestation of these things, millions of them. They're everywhere. They're freaking everywhere. And they're big, and their wings fall off, and their legs fall off, and they're all over my garage, all over the place. And they come and they like to land on you. You can see them, they're just all flying around. I mean, 2 weeks ago, they were really bad. They're like giant mosquitoes. Man, they're everywhere. They're all over the ground, and they litter, and they're annoying as hell. Maybe from all that rain that we've had. Here's the ring. This ring went right up into this gap right here, and it's a pretty substantial rubber ring. That's got to come out, and as you'll see, the spacer now takes up this spot where this one was, and it feeds down into the rubber that's down in here. So that's where it's going to be doing a lot of work. Yeah, so you got to cut that off. And I just used some plant shears. It did an awesome job. Did a really good job. I just put it in there and just cut it, and it came right out. So there you go. That's another tool you got to have. Okay, here's the collar. This collar has to fit up really close to the top and fit on over this rubber. And it's going to be hard just to see. Let me click to a different view. Okay, see, there's this rubber piece. You got to lower this down even further, probably past where you're going to be comfortable, because this piece, the collar, has to fit on above this rubber piece that sticks out. So you got to drop that down really, you know, quite a good distance, as you can see. So this is going to fit on, and now I'm not going to be able to do it with one hand. But now once it's on, it just slides over this rubber down into the rubber that's in here. So I'm gonna get that done. Let's get that focused. Let's see, it's not doing a real good job. All right, the front one went in really well, and the back one, you gotta lower it down pretty low. Got all the bushings on the top right there, and the collar, bushing collar, and I've got the one right there. Right there. And I've jacked the differential up to bring those in place. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, because it's out of the video, you can't really see a lot, so it's kind of want to be real precise. So I inserted the bushing right into here. It's now in there. It looks like this. I sprayed it with WD-40, got it lubed up. It looks like this. I know the lighting is not that great. It's number A, and they just insert up in there. Okay, so now we have that one in there. We got the one up top and the one on the bottom. So now we're gonna install this metal brace again. Don't worry about lining these holes up over here. We're just gonna put this right in here so this doesn't fall out. It'd be helpful if I had my socket wrench over here. Bear with me. And you will have to have, and I'll put this hopefully in the beginning, you have to have 2 deep sockets, and hopefully you can see this. You got to have a 19 deep socket and a 14 deep socket. Yeah, so they got to be deep sockets, and you can't do it without your deep sockets. So don't start this process until you have at least those 2 deep sockets. Yeah, so then we got that there. I'm gonna do it on the other side, just like that. All right, just to be real thorough to help people understand this before they do this, to make them feel more comfortable. That's the whole thing. You're buying this and you want to feel more comfortable about doing it. And so doing this step by step, showing you that's pretty easy to do. There's some holdups. I'll go into the whole install at the end of this video, but once you get about halfway through it, it seems really difficult in the beginning, and then halfway through it, and about 3/4 through it, you're like, oh man, I see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, and it wasn't that terrible bad. It's just intimidating, and it is. So you got this brace in, okay, and I'm just gonna skip around. You gotta tighten this up. You gotta your 19-inch deep socket. You gotta tighten that up so that this gets tightened up and brings it up to your mounting points right here, and then it lays flat against there. So now it's going to be your opportunity to put these in. The bolts, the 2 14mm bolts that we took out earlier. Make sure they don't bind up. Make sure they go in pretty smoothly. Here's the last part in the process. Hopefully I don't bump the camera. It's this last bushing collar, and take this. I guess you don't. Yeah, I guess you do take this one off. Spray this with WD-40. Get it on the insides. Alright. You can see up there where the gaps are and where these are going to fit. Just push it up into place. These are the number B, or the letter B. Easy enough. Reinsert these. Alright. Use your 19 deep socket. Got a long way to screw that up. Hopefully I can do this by hand now. It's kind of slippery because of the WD-40. Gotta use a rag. Speed this on there. This gets torqued to 89, 90 foot-pounds. I think that's what it is. I get all the different measurements kind of confused. But go ahead and just kind of tighten that down. Let's see, I'm going to tighten it there. All right, yeah. All right, that's just tight. Not torqued, but just tight. All right, and I'm gonna do that for the other side, and then it's done. You know, I gotta add some other little pieces and the little covers that go up front, the plastic covers that go up the front, and put the wheels back on, and then torque all this stuff down. Make sure I don't leave anything untorqued. That'd be disastrous. And put the wheels back on, and it should be ready to go. I couldn't sleep late last night, so about 2 o'clock I got up and finished the job, torqued everything down. There's the rear, and there's the front portion right there, and then there's, oops, sorry, finger. There's the little plastic skid plate, the rear rubber piece here, that's back on, and then I even have back on my, let's see here if we can see it, my rubber piece, the exhaust hanger. That went back on really easy. I'll show you that real quick. That's back on. Don't forget that piece that hangs your exhaust from. Yeah, so that's all good on both sides, driver and passenger side, torque down. So all the bolts are ready, are taken care of. Only thing left to do is put on the other side rubber flange, and the rubber hanger, and I'm going to do that here just so you can see how easy it is, but it was not easy taking it off. You got to use some WD-40. You can see my WD-40 can right there is pretty helpful as just a lubricant. Pry bars to get those off, but you can put those back on by hand again with WD-40. All right, Gonna put the hanger back on, the rubber isolator or whatever you want to call it. Gonna spray some WD-40 in there. That'll really help to get it lubricated up. And then come in and place it on the top one first. Well, let me see. No, I think it's the bottom one. It just works out best this way. Slip it on. It goes on pretty good with your hand. And WD-40, and then you're gonna, let's see here. Where's the, just scoot it on and center it. And then hopefully that'll dry and it'll stay there, and that puts your rubber pieces back on your exhaust. It's all buttoned up, tires are back on. It's just a quick scan of everything. Didn't have to take the exhaust off. Everything is ready to be put down on the ground and back installed. Tires back on. Sorry for my fingers. Everything's good to go. Alright, to wrap this video up, because it's already getting long, I'll try to hurry and be to the point. Now, just keep this in mind. If you're a mechanic and you do this all the time, or you do this weekly, and you've got a lift, and this is what you're accustomed to, then this probably isn't that big of a deal. But for someone that works on their car and does some modifications like this, maybe 3 times a year, this was a pretty substantial endeavor to undertake. It was a little, fearful, taking the subframe off and doing some of those things. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, once you're into it and you've kind of dropped the subframe and everything kind of gets past that point of no return, then there's light at the end of the tunnel. Then it becomes, it didn't seem as difficult as it could have been when I started doing this. I don't know if that'll make sense to y'all, but I'm happy with it. I went and drove the car, and it's definitely more connected. It's more of a sports car feeling. You feel more jolts in the road and more bumps and a little bit more noise, but that's the trade-off. And it's pedal is a little more connected, to the rear end. When you step on it, it feels a little bit more like an electric car rather than, some of that delay and some of that, I don't know what to tell you, but that is just the feeling that I got. A little bit more connection for $168. If you don't feel confident in having a selection of tools and the ability to, what I think, I have it in a garage, and I would hate to be under a time crunch and do this, within a day. I took 2 or 3 days, and I just left it in the garage and slept on some things and came back and worked on it again, and I think that just helped so that I wasn't under the gun to just hammer this out in a couple hours, and I had to be somewhere, at the end of the day. So, what else is there to say? Overall experience, install on a scale from 1 to 10, the heat exchanger, for example, where would I put the heat exchanger install? Maybe it's a 6 or a 7, from 1 to 10. And then I guess these subframe bushing collars are maybe a little bit more 7 or 8 in the initial part, and then maybe once I got into it and got it done, maybe a 6. So yeah, you gotta have a 19 deep socket, and it helps if you have different wrenches. You have, a 1/2 inch and 3/8, and you for flexibility of space, because the major problem is the car's 1.5 feet off the ground, maybe 2 feet in the rear, and so you're just limited on space. If I had a car lift, it'd be a whole different story. Everything would be easier, but maybe you might want to pay someone to do this. I don't know what it's going to cost for someone to do this, maybe $200 or $300. So at least I'm glad that I got that done and I saved that money. And it is quite an accomplishment when you get done. It's a really good feeling that you do things yourself. I mean, it's good for your mind, your body, and your soul. Well, it is mine, to be working on things and successfully do it, and using tools and using your brain and seeing the end results. So with that said, I don't know what else there is to cover. I always think I got a lot more to say, and I probably do. You just want to have a lot of the tools that I mentioned, and then I couldn't remove my exhaust. That was probably the hardest part. And I'll just say, I'll probably get some negative comments I wasn't using it right, and I could be. That torque wrench, the power air tool that I got it from my friend that was a mechanic and retired, and he's got a couple of them, and I just don't have a lot of experience with those. But on the nuts on the exhaust, I had high quality wrenches, my Craftsman, my gear wrench, and the box end, or the closed end, end wrenches, so that you don't get the stripping. It started to strip the first nut that I was trying to get off. It started to roll those edges. It just would not come off. And the air wrench ratchet, it didn't want to take it off, and so I don't know what to do, and it's not rusted. So I don't need, maybe that container of the spray loosener of nuts, my friend said, if it's rusted, you need that. Otherwise, you don't need it. I don't know. Maybe if I had that, it would have just come right off. But I'm glad I don't have to mess with the exhaust. And that's probably most of the reason why I haven't even tried to do an exhaust, because downpipes is just such a beating. That exhaust was a beating. So once I got past the exhaust and I started moving forward and getting into the other things, and then it's pretty straightforward. So if you have any questions, shoot me a message and I'll try to help you. The collar's inserted. I didn't have to do too much twisting in the instructions. It says, twist, and so you've got to twist to make it fit in. The rear, I think, there are some gaps. The collars do have gaps in them, so you want to place them in, the rear portion where you can put your finger in there and feel them. So you just obviously can't put those in there haphazardly and then torque it down, because that won't work. But I don't think the fronts had that problem. You just put them in there and you can move them around a little bit if they're lubricated. And I didn't notice any difference if I had it turned this way, or this way. So I just settled on just setting them in there. And then when you torqued the subframe up to the car, they didn't sit in there flush. But you could push on them and they were rubbery, and you could push them down, but they would come back up. So obviously when you torqued the subframe down and it lifted it up to the frame, those would be pushed down into the rubber the rubber grommet of the subframe. So hopefully that helps. If this was helpful and you found it informative, give me a like and even subscribe. Getting close to 1,000 subscribers, and that would be really, really cool. Other than that, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you found this informative. Other than that, have a good day, and thanks for tuning in.